feeling better, Leanne? All right, James, we'll get started. Okay, so we're reconvening the meeting that was adjourned last night at about 9 o'clock, 9:30. So today's the Thursday, the 17th of May. We're in May, aren't we? 2018, and it's 10:40. 9:40. Apologies, James. We're running a very tight quorum today, guys, so I know James has got to duck out later on.
The wife's having an operation today.
Okay, so that will take us down to our bare minimum. So is everyone else available to stay for the day? Okay, thank you.
So just for new members, even walking out of the chamber
You can't
breaks the quorum,
Yep.
so you need to be physically in here for us to be able to meet. Okay.
Yeah, so if somebody needs a water stop, text me and I'll just call a 5-minute stop. So we are actually all right for one person to leave at a time, but once James goes, we won't be. All right, so the first person we call is Craig Batchelor for the Catholic Diocese of Hamilton, with Graham, is it Royal, sorry. So you have 9 minutes to present, and that includes questions. The time will be on the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic board, and just the clock won't start until you're ready. And I just want to welcome you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks very much. I'll get right into it. Craig Batchelor. I'm a planner. I work for Boffin School Limited. We have offices in Hamilton and Tauranga. We've been working for the diocese for the last decade, assisting with their network of schools, including schools in Hamilton. I've got Graham Royal here today. He's going to speak to the submission primarily. I'm here to deal with any sort of technical issues that may arise. So I'll hand over to Graham and he'll take you through the kind of key points in the submission.
Good morning, everyone.
It's working, just don't touch it.
Okay.
Yep. Just pull the microphone down, maybe.
Yeah.
That's lovely, thank you.
Yes, my name's Graham Royal. I'm the school's Property and Finance Manager for the Hamilton Catholic Diocese. I have responsibility for the Catholic schools that cover a broad area, including Hamilton City. We have 7 integrated Catholic schools in Hamilton City, with just under 4,000 students attending those schools. All Catholic schools are integrated, and they were progressively integrated from 1975, when the legislation was passed to enter into a partnership with the state. So all of our schools are run by the state in a unique partnership with the church effectively still holding the land, but administered wholly by the Crown, with each of our schools having a board of trustees and being fully funded by the Crown. So I manage the property portfolio for each of those schools, and we receive funding equitable to the Crown schools in regards to maintaining those schools. With each of our schools having their own board of trustees, the fundamental difference between a board's responsibility for property for a state school and our own is that, as I say, I manage that property portfolio. all of our schools are self-funding, even for property, so what is not covered by the Crown in respect to any maintenance is met by the parents of the schools by way of attendance dues. They make a contribution to any difference which is not covered by the Crown. So our point in speaking to the development contributions policy which the Hamilton City Council has is that our schools are effectively expected to pay a development contribution for any change to the property holding within a school or increase which is not met by the Crown. And our view is that would be it's unreasonable and unfair that parents of our schools are expected to meet those additional costs which are not required by the Crown. They're also costs, if you like, or our schools are not drivers of growth, but a consequence of growth. And we meet, if you like, a choice that parents have got in terms of attending our schools. So just invite Craig to talk to some of the specifics of the policy, proposed policy.
Thanks, Graham. There's two main issues here. One is looking at the development contributions as a whole, and we've noted an example here around a proposed school at Rotatuna, which is in the sort of 5-year horizon for construction, and there's negotiations that are actively underway about that school being developed at the moment. And we, looking at the revised development contributions, did a test to see what impact the change in policy that's proposed in 2018 would have on the payment of development contributions, and the table in there sets that out. So it's effectively increases by our calculations from around $1 million to over 2.5 million. And that obviously raises some real concerns. I guess firstly in understanding what's behind that increase, we've been unable to kind of figure that out. It's a complex model, obviously, but we suspect it's to do with the removal of caps on the payment of DCs on household unit equivalents. But we'd like to kind of understand that better. But as Graham says, aside from that is really the question of are schools an actual growth? Are they a growth activity, or are they responding to growth? And I think that's a significant conceptual issue. People are paying development contributions for residential activities. Included in that is their things like water use and trips. That's calculated for those households. Some of those trips are going to school. Yet when you look at the way school impact fees are assessed, it's counting trips again. So in some sense there, to us, appears to be a double counting of the way that development contributions are assessed. The other point that we've noted is that state schools are actually fully exempt from the payment of development contributions, whereas state integrated schools aren't. And we believe that there should be some consistent approach. The only real difference is that in terms of how the schools operate is that the church owns the land. And there seems to be such a massive difference in approach between the two types of schools. It doesn't seem justified, and there seems to be a clear intent from the Crown that these are community services and should be exempt from the payment of development contributions. Now, this is obviously it's a big issue and has perhaps wider implications. And in terms of time frame, it's not necessarily an issue that needs to be dealt with in the short term. We've got potentially 5 years before the development contributions will need to be paid. But what we'd like to have is some dialogue about how schools are treated under the current regime. At the moment, they are treated as commercial activities, which clearly they're not. The second issue is a more narrow one around, and it came up through a specific case with St John's College and the development of a new gymnasium, where some additional floor space, or an increase in the size of that gym, has attracted a development contribution payment of around $50,000, and one that we calculate will increase to about $180,000 under the change policy. Now, the issue with this one is that the increase in the gym GFA does not actually cause any increase in demand for transport or water or any services. And we've put that proposition back to staff, and I think they have some sympathy with that, suggested we make a submission on it because there is no policy to allow them to deal with the situation. And what we've proposed is that there be an exclusion in the policy that where there are school buildings that have zero impact on infrastructure, that they be exempt from development contributions. We've had a look at other cases around New Zealand, growth areas in New Zealand, and to see how they treat similar circumstances. And we've listed those there. The nearest example is in Tauranga, where Aquinas College, integrated Catholic school in Tauranga, a new gymnasium there which was exempted from the payment of any development contributions on this ground that it didn't actually generate any demand for additional infrastructure. So there is some precedent in terms of how these things are dealt with. This is a short-term issue because the payment of development contributions is imminent, and we'd like some resolution of it. Thank you.
We'll move to questions. Councillor Dave.
Thanks. I understand your arguments about it being consequence of growth. That's a point well made. And the need for consistency, and I'm surprised to hear the difference. Just to clarify that, you pay all the normal developer levies that any commercial developer would, and a state school, Rototuna High, for instance, would pay none?
That's right.
Okay. I noticed that the biggest component, whichever way system you're looking at in the DCs, is transport. Catholic schools, by their nature, have bigger zones, except I know it's not treated as a zone as such, but they draw people from a wider area, so would have higher transport needs than a similar size state school in whichever area you're talking about, would they not?
Graham probably be able to comment, but a lot of that is bus travel. Any comment on that, Graham?
Well, the answer is yes. We draw off a larger catchment zone than a state school, which is primarily within the area.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And just a quick one on your St John's gym. Please, someone else is building a decent-sized gym, but that is going to attract more outside users, is it not? Or is it only for school students, the gym? It
has only been funded by the St John's community, the parent community.
But is the user, can the public hire it?
It's going to be used by the college itself. It, by nature of any school facility, may be available outside of school hours.
Yeah, so would a decent gym in Hamilton would, I'd put to you, draw more people to use it than I know your old gym, run events in there. Yeah.
Well, I suppose to put it another way, if the council provided the gym capacity, it wouldn't be subject to any development contributions.
Well, that's what your mistake was. Should have got us to do it or share it.
Well,
Sorry.
I guess in the end, it's the same thing. It's saying we're providing capacity for growth,
Yep.
And we're having to pay for an impact when it's actually addressing an impact. So that's the argument.
Yeah, take your point. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Just on the same kind of issue, you're claiming that there's no increase, you're not creating any growth. But when you put tarmac on grass, when you put a building up, you put toilets in, those things, whether or not it's people from new houses who live in Rototuna or Rotokaria or whatever, there are still impacts from the development which need to be mitigated, and those mitigations need to be paid for. Now, I don't know the argument between state schools and independent schools and integrated schools. Sorry, so I'm not part of that.
State integrated schools.
Pardon? Yes. Okay. But do you acknowledge that if a grass area becomes tarmac, there's a stormwater implication. If there's toilets built, there's a pipes implication.
And I think, that's the suggestion. We do need to sit down and talk this through because there are some direct impacts that do need to be addressed. I agree with you. And a lot of that's dealt with in terms of on-site measures on the school sites.
Yes.
I mean, for example, the Rotorua site deals with upstream stormwater from a residential development that's been accommodated in the infrastructure. So you're right, there are some direct issues, and I think, I think it's probably fair that there should be some contribution, but not on the basis of it being a commercial activity which pays at a very high rate. So it's really want to give a dialogue about that and find a happy middle ground that's affordable and makes more sense in a kind of, in terms of the logic of the kind of impact schools have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jones. Last question.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Graham, what's the role of St John's College now?
750.
So it's way lower than the likes of Boys High School.
Boys High is around 2,000.
Yeah, so they'd have less trips anyway, wouldn't they, at St John's?
Yep.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, who's presenting for Peter Finlay? Where is Peter Finlay? Okay, Bianca? Yep, thank you. It's all right, he'll come in, won't he? So this is Bianca Tree from Stride Investments presenting on DCs. Bianca, you have 9 minutes. The 9 minutes is on the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic board. That includes questions. The clock won't start until you're ready. Welcome, Bianca. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. Stride accepts the need for and payment of development contributions, provided they are calculated and allocated fairly and set at equitable levels. Development contributions cannot be used to reduce costs to other ratepayers that benefit from growth. You heard from Stride yesterday in respect of the proposed changes to the rating structure, and in particular that the rates for Chartwell, just one of Stride's properties in Hamilton, will increase from $630,000 per year to nearly 1.5 million. And it is in that context that the Council also needs to consider the proposed increase in development contributions. If the cost of operating and developing commercial property in Hamilton is too great, further investment and redevelopment will not occur. Commercial development, and in particular retail development, provides a range of benefits for the Hamilton community. And this investment and reinvestment in these centres needs to be encouraged. Stride's submission addresses 4 of the proposed amendments in the development contribution policy. The first is Amendment 2 to removal of existing cap charges. So Stride opposes the removal of those caps. The basis for the initial introduction of these caps remain. The caps should be retained to promote the growth, economic development and maintain competitiveness for Hamilton City. The second point is Amendment 4, the introduction of non-residential cap charges. This, in principle, is supported. However, the level of 60,000 is of no or little practical benefit, and Stride supports the levels proposed by the Property Council. The third point is Amendment 11, the updated schedule of charges, and I suppose this is a particular concern. The proposed increase to the development contributions for retail will result in over 100% increase compared to the current policy. So that's significant, really significant in terms of change. Stride's assets are largely located in existing urban areas in the infill catchment. A doubling of charges cannot represent a fair and equitable cost of growth in this area. And the fourth point is in Amendment 15, the cost recovery fees for remission or special assessment. And I note that this point has been raised by a number of other submitters. The proposal to recover costs associated with objections, applications for remissions and special assessments is not consistent with good administrative law principles of reasonableness, fairness and natural justice. The proposed policy is complex and it's important that developers can query and, if necessary, object to development contributions without the concern of being faced with additional charges for that process. The relief sought by Stride is set out in the submission, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Bianca. One of your first comments was about maintaining the caps. So you accept that the cost is there, that it has to be recovered by someone. So are you suggesting that the importance of getting growth is greater than allocating the cost to the person or the entity that creates the cost?
Well, I suppose, I appreciate the council always has a difficult issues in terms of the costs. I suppose, first of all, the cost and what you need to spend infrastructure, etc., costs on, both in terms of capex and
assuming we've got everything
maintenance.
right and we've got the best prices for everything.
Well, and I suppose, well, there is a concern in terms of that, the LTP has an additional 6 million, so 600 million more spending than previously. So it's a significant increase in spending proposed. I suppose there's also a concern that there are proposed projects or proposed funding for DC allocation and collection that is not identified to specific projects outside the 10-year plan. So in terms of the causal nexus of collecting funds for something that there's no certainty of what those projects are, that's contrary to the requirements in the LGA in terms of collecting development contributions. So
But that's not specifically, that's everything. You're just talking about the caps.
well, and I suppose what the caps do is provide some level of a consistency and certainty across the city in terms of what development contributions payments will be. And likewise the support for the caps for the non-residential will do the same.
Okay. May I have another second?
One more question.
Thank you. Yesterday we had someone else was talking about caps as well, and they suggested that and I just assumed that if there was a cap, the excess was just shot straight out to the ratepayers. But there was a suggestion that it was recycled back into the DC's model somewhere, and it was just pitched on to other developers. Are you concerned about that, or is that as you understand it?
I would have thought that it would have actually been sent back in terms of the I suppose then it's in terms of.
So there's this big black box called the development contributions, and there's a whole lot of guys in there, and we're shuffling it all around, or it goes out and just goes to the general ratepayer. I'm not too sure where the caps get funded from. Oh, sorry, the excess. The surplus goes to,
When I understood it would more than be a division of where going back to the general ratepayer base in terms of the percentage.
That was always my assumption too, Okay, and I suppose we need to
Thank you.
ask the guys who own the black box.
Councillor Dave.
So just following that one, you would only agree with the premise that growth pays for growth up to a point. Beyond that, everyone pays if there's an excess growth cost.
Well, I think it's probably difficult in terms of that's what the LGA provides for in terms of that there has to be a fair, so that growth doesn't pay for all the costs of growth.
I don't think the LGA says that though, does it? It doesn't say that growth doesn't have to pay for all.
Yes, it does.
It allows for that, but does it say that?
No, it does say that. It provides that there should be a fair allocation, and it doesn't say that growth is 100%
then there's a definition
paid.
of fair allocation, isn't there? And you're saying it's not fair that growth pays for 100% of growth if it's above a certain level.
Well, and that's because, I think that I don't think you could argue that growth should pay for all of the infrastructure required for, like a new suburb, because that infrastructure has a life well beyond I suppose, the immediate needs of that community. And it's about then making sure that there's more of an equitable distribution of that cost of infrastructure over the life of that infrastructure.
Though in terms of the life, we're allowed to charge within a DC policy for items that are identified, for instance, in 30-year infrastructure plans, aren't we?
When I suppose when I think I had the criticism of that, I think that there's uncertainty then about making sure there's a causal nexus between projects that you're collecting DCs for and to show that they're actually going to be spent on that project. And otherwise you can get into a range of issues about people saying, well, you haven't actually, I've paid for something, but it actually that project hasn't happened.
Yes, I appreciate that argument, but if there's a road outside a premise that's had DC's charged for, then in 30 years' time that road's still going to be there and have some residual value, and the upkeep costs of it have been there. So should you not, if that delivers people to that premise?
Well, and I suppose it's, there is this balancing act between DCs and then what that, so in terms of that property, then they are paying rates. And, how far should you be allocating what's a growth charge relative to then what is really a rate charge in terms of the ongoing maintenance of that infrastructure?
So then it's a question of apportionment, isn't it, correctly, isn't it? So that wasn't what I was going to ask, sorry. It was just on...
last question, Dave. We're out of time.
Admin charges.
One more question, Dave.
Yep. Why do you think that if a developer wants to query a policy that they shouldn't have to pay admin charges? And as part of that question, putting an alternative might be that they pay the charge, and if they win, i.e. get their argument accepted by council, they could get refunded. But if they don't get their argument accepted by council, that's a charge that someone has to pay. Would it not be then fair for the developer to pay that?
Well, no, I think there's probably a bit of a level, and I can see your point maybe in terms of an objection.
Yeah.
That final point. But I think in terms of the initial kind of request for a reassessment, I think it's really important that the council has kind of an open door policy in relation trying to encourage developers to come and talk and work through in terms of whether there's any concerns or issues in terms of the policy and how it's been applied.
So that's your biggest concern about that upfront charge for the initial calculation type period?
Particularly, but the concern we raised was, from a natural justice point of view for the whole process. But I do take your point in terms of making an objection, then, and if that objection was successful, that there shouldn't be any charges for that process.
Okay, we'll just stop there. We're well over on time, so
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bianca. So, Peter Vortier. Good morning, Peter. Your time is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. It'll be 4 minutes. You're speaking as an individual, and that includes questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors. I actually had two submissions, one regarding the Founders Theatre, the other regarding the Hamilton Gardens. I could only do justice to one, so I'll concentrate and make comment on the Founders Theatre come Regional Theatre. If you bear with me, I've rewrote some notes and I'll read this out so I get it something like right. Regional Theatre, I have some analysed data and comment for use in the debate regarding the Founders Theatre possible rehabilitation. Any debate on the project should start with an analysis of basic cost of replacing the original theatre, and after that, to justify, if necessary, any increase in cost caused by improvements. For that reason, I have worked together with a group of structural engineers and quantity surveyors in a private capacity to develop a basic cost for replacement and somewhat improvement of the stage area of the existing theatre. We have used the same data which has been developed by your own consultants to get comparison. This building analysis is in two parts. One, retain the existing grounds, entrance, foyer and seating areas, but strengthened to meet the requirements of the new structural earthquake code. You have a moral and legal obligation for that. Cost $1.5 million. The stage and service areas have long been unsatisfactory. Additionally, this is a complicated area for structural change. Our solution is to bulldoze this part of the theatre and rebuild it to modern standards. Cost $11.5 million. Total expected base cost of $13 million is the starting point for any new project proposals. Sorry. I gave you time to consider the points. We have no reservations as a group about any additional expenditure which Council may approve. Let us make that point clear. We are concentrating on the basic cost so that you correctly can make additional comments, additional standards if you wish to. But every cost above $13 million must be justified by improved performance or location. That is a challenge from us to the Council, to justify anything above $13 million as an improvement in performance or location. This is substantially a reiteration of the existing facility, and with costs based on the data from your own consultants. We have not attempted to assess the size, location, technical requirements, or variation from the community for a new regional theatre. But we have made considerable effort to reach a base point from which you can continue your debate. Thank you for listening.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. I think you just answered my question. My question was going to be, in those costs, the basic fix-up costs, that didn't include things like the fly tower and any sort of refreshment inside, just the basic structural stuff?
It includes the flies and the curtains. It doesn't include any improvements to the existing theatre, no.
No. So
But it meets the technical standards and the modern technology that you require at the, shall we say, the working end of the theatre. Okay. And brings it to a new standard at that cost.
thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter, for your submission. Just one question. You said a couple of times we. So is there more people that you've talked about and worked with on this?
Yes. I'm technically redundant. Let's face it. I'm a geriatric, but I have put together some very capable structural engineers and quantity surveyor, people that I know, and I've assessed them, and they, in actual fact, are probably at a higher standard than in terms of understanding and detail of your own crew.
Thank you.
No, I'm incompetent.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your presentation, Peter.
Thank you.
So, okay, so Peter Finlay.
Peter has is submitting a verbal submission. He has a handout that elected members have as a supporting information for his verbal submission. You will not find him inside the system.
Sorry, there's nothing in the system?
No, his paper submission was received after the close date, and so he's presenting as a verbal submission only. But he has supporting information, which is what you have.
So Peter, who are you presenting for?
Just my development interests.
So is that a company?
company and trust.
Thank you. So you have 18 minutes. Your time will be on the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic screen.
Okay.
Your 18 minutes includes any questions, and we won't be running over time.
Sure.
And I just want to thank you and welcome you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and welcome you. Yes?
Isn't it just one organisation, even though it's two entities?
He's presenting on the 10-year plan and on DCs.
Okay.
So it's 9 minutes for each.
Right, good to go. Yep, so you know who I am, Peter Finlay. I've given a little bit of background on my point 2, so I'm just working through my presentation document for today. I've talked about my property interests, which are located in Victoria Street and number 1 Gwyn Place, the latter being a development site, and I've given it size. Just really talked a little bit about the philosophical argument, or the argument in principle, about whether growth should pay for growth or whether it should be shared by community. And so I've just talked in 4, pretty much I'll read that out. It's a key issue is whether the cause of growth should pay for such growth, or whether the cost burden associated with growth should be shared with the community in some way. Many arguments exist for and against, however no compulsion exists to adopt either course of action. My view is it is a question of balance and not just equity. In the absence of growth, effects on economic and social well-being are likely to be keenly felt by many who live in Hamilton City. I support the principle of the costs of growth being shared between developers and the community. Talking about the development contribution proposals, I share similar views to the Property Council of New Zealand regarding consolidation of housing typologies to eliminate room-based charging. I consider PCNZ's suggested approach to development contribution charges to be practical. I reiterate my written submission to Amendment 3 that seeks to recover capital expenditure outside the 10-year plan. It's not mandatory for Council to adopt this approach, and I question whether sufficient nexus has been established by Council as between development today and future infrastructure commitments over years 11 to 20, which are at best uncertain. Whilst I do not intend to add a great deal to my written submission, to highlight my concern with the proposed development contribution policy and in support of my specific submission and a similar approach adopted by Property Council New Zealand, I have applied the proposed development contribution policy to my 1 Gwyn Street site and compared it to the current development contribution policy. It's going to 8. So if you look at what I can do, there's 12 apartments and 2 townhouses. Additional development contributions for 12 apartments amount to 125,000. 2 townhouses attract development contributions of 35,200 each. The assumptions are provided there. However, there's some uncertainty that applies to the way in which credits are established. I've referred to 2 houses of 200 square metres and 100 square metres respectively. The first one is a 100-year-old property, and Council, about 100 years, and Council has no records to establish its initial use and the way it was used in terms of bedrooms, etc., because the original drawings and records were destroyed by fire many decades ago. Consequently, methods applying to credits need to be clear and equitable, and if in doubt, biased to the property owner. Final point, additional development contributions at 125,000 as referred to above would be borne by the landowner. These cannot be passed on. I know there's some independent advice on that, and I support that advice. I think there's a clear burden on the landowner. The property in question is around 100 years old, and it's counterintuitive that development contributions for development in this area, so close to the CBD and treated as infill west, are not the lowest that could apply, particularly if it compared against those that apply to greenfield areas where most infrastructure is new. My view is catchment areas and development contributions are not sufficiently refined to be relied upon in old established areas. That's the end of my presentation.
So if you, are you presenting the 10-year plan? Is that wrapped up both your presentations?
No, that's just on the development contributions. Okay. That just follows any questions, so I'm just ready to roll on.
I think it's safer for you to roll on and then take questions at the end to ensure you don't run out of time.
Okay.
Otherwise, we may have to cut you short on your presentation.
All right. So going to my written presentation for today. I'm just going straight to point 3. I've outlined my property interests and why there is not a conflict, because I'm outside the Peacock Structure Plan area. In 4, I outline that I generally support the long-term plan. In 5, I start to talk about rates at 9.5% over the next 2 years, and so I support that in principle. Where I vary with the sort of generalised proposal is that I'm suggesting that no uniform annual general charge apply, really mainly because I feel it poses a unnecessary burden at this time on the lower socioeconomic group, particularly as I'm interpreting lower capital values to be associated with those who are less able to pay. So that's a human response entirely. 6, in my view, the prerequisite to all rates increases and the long-term plan is well-targeted, good value spending that is not too condensed and too short a time frame, I mean by that, to prevent price gouging by suppliers and contractors. So my concern is really with lumpy expenditure in a condensed time frame where everyone knows that council's got to have the infrastructure in place and they price accordingly. 7, underpinning the submission is the proposition that council should use tools and techniques at its disposal to insulate those members, not businesses, of our community who are unable to bear rates increases greater than 5% due to income constraints or disabilities. So my point there is for council to use the tools at its disposal, and I understand that's a complex equation, or there can be complex measures, and some of the documents that council published sort of articulate what those options could look like. Other proposals. In framing my submission, I've given the greatest weight to those proposals that offer the best prospects for growth, resilience, and improved levels of service for transport and Three Waters infrastructure, livability, community infrastructure and wellbeing. 9, the long-term plan includes a number of standout or must-do proposals due to the opportunities they provide to get ahead of growth in terms of land supply, the transport infrastructure network, and community infrastructure that leverages the river, enhances social wellbeing, and anchors Hamilton's prospects and reputation as being a great place to live, work, play and visit. These projects are specifically Peacocks, the regional theatre, the river plan. Look, I've articulated why I support Peacocks in 10 and what I feel is the, if you like, those standout or those comparative advantages. And the same with the regional theatre in terms of community infrastructure. I think I'll just leave you to read those at your leisure. I go to 12. I support the partnership funding strategy that supports partnership, that seeks future partnerships with others who also benefit from the services we provide. This has been council. Partners may include the government, neighbouring councils, philanthropic groups or private industry. I think that's a good objective. I've talked to the specific points in my submission and added a few. I suppose I'll just sort of run through those quickly. Sort of go to the 3 as in there were challenges outlined in the consultative document and or the submission document, and then there were items below those challenges. So the items, the challenge 1 and item 1 and 2 just really follow that sequence. So in 3, I've given some additional revenue options apart from fuel tax. I think there's come quite some current thinking around, if you like, trying to capture some of the added value. That seems to be Productivity Commission has been recently tasked with looking at what other tools could be provided to council to fund its growth and fund its operating costs. I'm suggesting that one of the powers that council has is its zoning powers, and they use them with that foreknowledge and purchase land ahead of rezoning, do the rezoning, confirm the infrastructure provision and sell with resource consent. Don't see that as overly risky. Also, I've suggested, and I'm sure this is already happening, that council continue to lobby central government to develop a mechanism which fairly attributes a share of economic and visitor activity to local government. I'm not talking about a share of GST, I'm talking about other mechanisms. It's a matrix. Challenge 2, the next about housing area, I've talked about that. Let's go down to 6. I'm suggesting that you spend as much as you possibly can to get ahead of growth and to get ahead of level of service issues, which I see as only growing. And B, saying if you're going to bias that investment, where would you do it? I'm saying safety and level of service. And 7, in terms of any specific transport projects I had in mind, I have employed a team of consultants. We've identified some quite serious congestion issues between Houchins Road or Dixon's Road and Collins Road. Micro-simulation is needed to identify causation and solutions. Once again, so I'm suggesting that some safety capacity intersection improvements along that strip of road occur. In B, there's a item in the long-term plan that talks about adding a shared cycleway, walkway on the northern side of the Wiriora Bridge. My property is adjacent to that proposal. I can't see how it's feasible. Saying, have you got it wrong? Should it be on the west, on the other side? Should there be a clip-on? So I'm saying, hey, time to have some consultation, time to talk to me about this, because to me it makes no sense. I think you're actually potentially exposing yourself to a land acquisition. But also, I think on the southern side of the Boundary Road, at the Wiriora Bridge, there's no effective barrier to the road and river, and the southern side is the greatest demand. So I'm saying it's a place where suicides take place, and it's also a place where you are freaked out if you're walking on that bridge, because, as I say, there's no barrier. I know cyclists who also cycled along there and just through fear have come a cropper and been, it's pretty hurt. Right. Anyway, so that's my point about transport. Talked about in 9 about other community projects if they're optional. I'm not saying that they probably are, but I'm looking at the suggesting the Zoo Master Plan, the River Plan projects, just to leverage that whole investment that's occurring on that strip. Library network expansion improvements, community projects. I've always been a fan of the destination playgrounds, and I'd really like to see one standout proposition there equivalent to something like the Margaret Mahi playground in Christchurch. It's absolutely amazing, and once again I could see that really leveraging the river asset and having catering for all age groups. In terms of the Hamilton Garden entry fee of $10, I'm saying, yeah, go for it. But hey, if it needs to be less, make it less. But as long as it's feasible to do, put all the mechanisms in place to actually charge the money and receive it. I'm saying widen that to visitors from outside the Waikato region. I know that sounds simple, but that's with you. Okay, that's the end of my submission.
We'll move to questions. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, Peter. I'm talking to your development contributions presentation, item 9. You talk about infill development, and you've got a difficult sentence here. The property in question is 100 years old and is counterintuitive that DCs, and it is counterintuitive that DCs for development in this area so close to the CBD and treated as infill are not the lowest it could apply. So are you assuming, because there is a point at which infill development is not free, that, you know, the old pipes do actually have to be expanded and roads have to be widened and all sorts of things, and that can actually be more expensive than greenfield stuff. Is that so? I guess, is that what you were saying? You're saying that's what I just said then is not correct.
Yeah, I'm saying it's counterintuitive, that's correct. I'm saying, if I look at my specific site, and I think that's the issue with the DC, it's not very bespoke. The catchment areas are very wide and very broadly defined. I think when I look at that specific site, you have upgraded, it's been there, as I say, probably more like 120 years, not 100, but you've upgraded the pumping station, all the pipes to the pumping station, so it's pretty much everything from there that's an issue. So like there's a new bridge is not that old, the roads, as I say, with CBD, we don't tend to travel much out at Peacocks and out north, you know, so it's a lot more confined.
I guess my point is that in a general point of view, you know, taking a general position, generally infill will be cheaper, but once it, you know, when it gets to be 100 years old, there is some level, and I don't know, the pipes might have been upgraded 20 years ago or something, but...
Oh, no, it's probably more like 10, Chris will know. But I suppose my point is, I think any upgrade of infrastructure in this area, I imagine it's been done more than once if it's 100 years old. If it hasn't, should there be a DC related to it, because it's obviously overdue. But I think it's I can understand that some costs ought to be borne by infill development in old areas. I'm not saying it should be free. I'm saying it should be at the lowest. Intuitively, you would say, yeah, it should be at that low end, not at the high end.
Intuitively, but there will be a reality situation where, okay, you would assume that the roads are all adequate, but, you know, this is the development that cracks the egg, you know, that this is the one that burst the pipes open, or this is the one that... If that is the case, I'm just,
Yeah, so I've asked the question.
Yeah, okay.
I've asked the question, does the wastewater from this area travel all the way out west and get to the pumping station? The answer is yes. So...
Okay, so you've done the work on this one?
I've tried to understand what I'm saying. You know, I've tried to underpin what I'm saying. So, so there is some science to the way the development contributions are calculated. I'm just saying overall, wastewater's one, transports are others. There's a number of elements to it. Saying some of those don't quite add up to me.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Peter.
Last question, Councillor Ryle.
Thanks. In your DC's doc, I think, you talk about uniform growth charge, Peter.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you can speak to that, as in, do you have a fixed amount in mind as to how one would go about setting that? And also in point D, you talk about unsupportable financial contributions with a capital F, but I'm not sure which financial contributions you're referring to.
This is in my previous submission, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, two-pager.
Okay, where are we? So this is under DCs. Which point are we on?
Okay, so on your third page, you talk about the uniform growth charge.
Yeah, I'm saying the principle that applies to rates where you have a uniform annual growth charge, you could equally apply to development. I don't know what that level is. It might be 5,000. You know, so and I suppose where I really struggle with the development contribution regime is I turn it around the other way and say, okay, if you were to add up all the growth that could occur, so all the infrastructure that's there, what growth could it service? And when I talk about infrastructure, I mean by area and by type. And I don't think that council would be in a position to explain that. But ultimately, to be transparent about how this DC regime works, that's the sort of information you need to ensure, so the development community can ensure that
yep.
there's fair charge.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, just for
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Also, financial contributions with a capital F. What do you mean by that?
Whereabouts are we?
Next page D, adoption of a new DC policy should coincide with removal of unsupportable financial contributions.
Yeah, so I'm saying, there is a financial contribution that applies to property adjoining the river where they can take, if it's certain distance from, put it this way, there's a policy whereby in lieu of contribution to neighbourhood reserves, you can take a financial contribution. I'm saying all that should be wrapped up in the DC policy. I don't think it's a supportable technique anymore in terms of case law.
Thank you.
Lachlan will no doubt have a view about that. Am I clear about what I'm saying there?
Yeah, for time. I get
Yeah,
the idea.
I'm saying it should all be wrapped up in DCs, any contribution to neighbourhood reserves, wherever they are. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll now call Lucy De Lator and Dr. John Small for Adair Group Limited. So welcome.
Thank you.
You for coming. You have 9 minutes. You're presenting on DCs.
Correct.
Your clock is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Just start when you're ready.
I am representing the Adair Company Limited today, and I'm accompanied by Dr. John Small, who's an economist engaged by Adair. We're not presenting anything further today. We've covered everything, I think, in quite a bit of detail in our submission already filed, and which includes Dr. Small's report, which he'll talk to. I think it's important that you hear from him the most in terms of Adair's submission, but there are three things that I will just briefly address first. The first point that I want to reiterate, and it's a submission point that we made in terms of the LTP itself, is Adair's support for the Council's identification of peacocks within the LTP. Of course, Adair strongly supports the Council's commitment to the growth area and the Council's investment in peacocks. The other points that we raised today in terms of the development contributions policy shouldn't be seen to detract from that. Rather, Adair's just simply trying to ensure that the policy reflects the Council's statutory obligation and, to an extent, understands some of the assumptions underpinning the policy. I've got two other observations that I'll just mention, and they align with what Dr. Small will talk to you about further. But the first of those is that there's this, I suppose, concern that prevails through the submission and the various issues raised in it, that spending, both underspending in terms of previous development and also the wider spending forecast, is being loaded onto the current generation of developers. Now, Dr. Small will elaborate on these points. The other observation that I wanted to just touch on before we get into the detail is a theme of transparency. So some of the issues that Dr. Small comments on really relate to not actually being able to understand some of the background assumptions, and to the extent that there is an opportunity for the likes of Dr. Small to discuss with officers further, that would be very helpful from Adair's perspective. I'll now hand over to Dr. Small.
Thank you, Lucy, and good morning. I'm just going to talk about the sort of touch briefly on the 6 main points of the document that I've submitted to you. Just preface it by saying I understand that these development contribution models are difficult to specify, difficult to run. My company, COVIC, has been cited in your literature on developing these models. So I'm not coming here to, in any sense, to to sort of outright criticise what I've seen. I want to be helpful about it, but I also appreciate that it's difficult, given the complexity in these models, to completely explain it to the level that somebody like myself would give comfort to myself and to other people who are expert in this field. So let me just start, go through the 6 items. The first one is about timing, and Lucy has mentioned this. There's a significant step back. There's 2 big issues. One is about what is included, how much cost is being allocated through this mechanism, and the second one is about how do we get that. So in regards to how much is being allocated, the first question is about timing, and it's clear that there's a backlog, that there's a lot of projects in the model that expenses have already been incurred prior to July 2017. About 27% of the total cost is of that type. And so I'm not clear myself whether this is due to over-enthusiastic forecasting in the last round and therefore a shortfall in development contributions or relative to budget, or whether this is due to some other policies or market developments. But be that as it may, I think it's difficult to argue that such a significant chunk of money that was spent in a previous 10-year period should be allocated to this current generation of developers. I think a better system, a better approach to that money would be to either spread it more generally through the rate base, or if you want to take it out of development contributions, mortgage it over a longer period of time so that it's less severe cost right now. So that's the first point. Second point, cost allocation. These models, once you've got the amount of money that's involved, allocating in terms of making the projects, the infrastructure projects, the next question is how much of that gets allocated to the growth community. And in doing that, I'm suggesting that you should take into account, I certainly accept that the causal nature of growth causing infrastructure development, requiring it, but there are also benefits for the wider community from having more people around. And I'll talk about those in my paper, and I suggest you should take those into account as well. The third thing is that there's looking through the asset register, there's a number of items there that are in the category of things that would often be vested in the council by developers at the time of development. So things like reserves, local roads inside subdivisions, that kind of thing. All I'm concerned about is to make sure that if they were vested, then the value of them is not also being recovered through the DC. So that's a little double counting issue. It should be easy to sort out. So that's the question. That's the first set of issues about what is included. Regarding the structure of the charges, make 3 points. One is about uptake forecasting, and I suggest that it might be useful and prudent to take account of the fact that these contributions are increasing markedly and that there may be some demand reaction to that. In other words, maybe less development as a result of a large spike in DCs, and that will affect your forecast, and so that should be thought about. The second point is indexation, which I don't object to as a principle. I think it's a perfectly fine plan, but there's some things in the documentation that give me cause for concern about how it's been done. So that's really just a bit of transparency, hopefully. Hopefully it's done correctly, but it should be easy enough to sort out one way or another. And the third point is relatively minor, but does matter to developers and also to people who subsequently buy from developers, and it's about the unders and overs. So the DC has been struck on a 3-bedroom standard household unit equivalent basis. You've got an automatic uplift if somebody builds a bigger dwelling, but if somebody builds a smaller dwelling, there's a much more convoluted process. It's not symmetric, essentially, and so I think maybe some symmetry there would be good. I'll stop now.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thank you very much. Just your last one. Is it your the 3 houses versus 2 houses? Is it your, because those things won't be linear. I mean, going from 1 bedroom to 2 bedrooms won't double it, and going to 3 won't treble it. There will be a level of
That's right.
It flattens out, yeah.
That's right, but things are done on the basis of an expected number of residents in the dwelling, and that's done on a bedroom basis. So,
okay,
yep.
All right, okay. Clearly, your other one of your other you're suggesting that DC, and this is going to be quite an obvious question, that increasing DCs will, to some extent, deter development.
Yeah.
You're concerned about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I am concerned about that. Oh, well, I mean, I'm presenting that as a forecasting issue, though. If you've got a projection of how much revenue you're going to get in, yeah.
Okay. One of the points you made was I have always considered quite fundamental to this, and this is who causes the spending versus who benefits from the spending. And there's a, and I think when we talk about who pays for growth, we mean who causes it. Which is generally the developer, but of course there's a lot of flow-ons from extra roading and parks and things like that. So the general public, and you're saying that there's an argument to say just because you happen to live there already and you're going to benefit doesn't mean that you should pay for that in your rates.
It doesn't mean that you have to. All I'm saying is that there are benefits, tangible economic benefits to the wider community from having a bigger community, and I'll give some examples of that in the paper.
And how would you suggest that should be addressed?
That's I can't do that in negative 52 seconds. I'm sorry, but I'd say that some estimates could and should be made. But I haven't got that for you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you for your submission. Just a clarification. So you were talking about the DCs towards the parks, and that you're developing, but you don't want to. That should not be included in DCs because you're developing and you're vesting it onto the council. Is that what you were saying, or did I mishear that a bit?
That's pretty right. But just to emphasise my concern, and I hope that it's just a worry that can be allayed very easily, is that there may be some double counting. That maybe a developer has granted to the council, let's say, a reserve, and that reserve's worth $1 million. That's fine. That's a contribution. It shouldn't also then go on the books and say, well, it's $1 million worth of land, so we'll allocate that out. That's all. It's a double counting issue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, last question, Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Good morning. Just interested in the timing issues where you identified 27%, potentially 27% of the costs incurred. Where would we look to? Where did you find that?
I found that in the asset register spreadsheet that is available on the council's website, and they go through and it tells you when things were built.
Thank you. And the last one is the comment you made about the 3-bedroom versus 2-bedroom. I understood, the 3-bedroom, and then you go up to 4-bedroom. You've got an additional. It's easy to classify the additional demand.
That's
but
right.
Going down from 3 to 2, you're saying there's not a similar level of simplicity about defining.
No. I think there is a similar level of simplicity, but the proposed policy treats them very asymmetrically. So the way the proposed policy works.
I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
So what it means, what I'm saying is that if somebody built, the development contribution goes in as a 3-bedroom. That's the assumed amount. If somebody comes along and builds a 4-bedroom house. During that process of consenting, they're charged extra for the fact that not enough development contribution was paid. Now that we know that they're building a 4-bedroom house, right? And so the council gets that contribution up front at the time of the consenting of the dwelling. If somebody, on the other hand, builds a 2-bedroom dwelling, they don't get a rebate. They've paid for a 3-bedroom development contribution on a 3-bedroom house when they bought the land, but they're building a 2-bedroom house which should attract a lower development contribution, I would have thought it would be a relatively simple matter to rebate that difference back to the...
Just to clarify, they can apply for a remission, but it's a more, the point is it's a more complicated process.
Yeah, so that's how I read what you said. So it's a little bit harder to get back what you shouldn't have paid than it is to add on.
Correct, and there's a question of where that credit sits. It might never be able to be used if that property's never developed further.
Thank you.
So, Lucy, you've indicated that Dr. John would like to touch base with one of our officers. So, Greg, could you, on the way out, could you just grab them and swap contacts? Thank you.
Thank you.
And is there anything else, any other concerns you want to raise before you finish?
No, look, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it's basically sound, and as I said at the start, I'm looking for a bit of extra assurance because that's the world in which I operate, and I think it's reasonable, but I appreciate it's difficult to provide all of that technical information in published documents.
Lovely. Okay, Lucy, you're finished?
Yes, thank you.
So thank you very much for your presentation. So Robert Dole for Golden Valley Farms. Robert's presenting on the DCs. Robert, you have 9 minutes. Your time's at the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic screen. That includes questions. Just start when you're ready.
Morning, everyone. Golden Valley Farms Limited, Golden Park Farm Limited, and Golden Ridge Farm Limited have, in the submission of as Golden Valley Farm, thanks Hamilton City Council for the opportunity to make a submission and present on the long-term plan and development contributions policy. Golden Valley Farm has a large landholding immediately adjoining the southern boundary of Hamilton City in Waipa District. The land is located between Saxby's Road to the north and Hutchinson's Road at the south, and the landholding currently houses a productive dairy farm. The landholding is traversed by NZTA's designation in the Waipa District for the Southern Links Transport Network. The Southern Links designation directly affects the key farm. The Crown has acquired a proportion of the land from Golden Valley Farm required for the Southern Links project, in which turn it has leased back that land for 10 years. Once the inevitable construction of Southern Links project commences, the farm will become uneconomically viable. With this in mind, Golden Valley Farm has commissioned extensive investigations to demonstrate that its own and adjoining land in Hamilton City's south side of Southern Links is suitable for urban development, and we are aware that land is likely to come into Hamilton City within the medium term. The purpose of our presentation is to present and outline significant concerns we have in regards to the development contributions policy and the proposed, and based on the negative impact to business and property sector, which will include government's well-publicised housing affordability targets. Summary of our submission. Golden Valley Farms supports the following proposal, Amendment 14, in regards to removing interest costs not incurred by HCC due to the interest-free borrowing of the HIF funding. Golden Valley Farm proposes the following amendments. Amendment 2. Housing and HCC proposes to remove existing cap charges that were introduced in 2012-13 Development Contributions Policy. At that time, I was the branch president of the Property Council. We did present at those hearings, and we did indicate that those charges will have an adverse effect, and we didn't believe council would get the forecast revenue in DCs, and it didn't for a number of years until the market obviously picked up and the section values obviously increased, in which case it made it more affordable. I am concerned that there is a significant challenges the cities face, and both ratepayers and the property and business community need to carry a portion of the load, but the levels of the increased charges I think are going to have a significant impact on the development and business community, including and residential. I think the cap charges need to stay in certain areas. Amendment 4, we support the ideology of the introduction of cap charges in regards to commercial and retail developments and industrial. However, we oppose the proposed cap at $60,000. To ensure the economic viability of Hamilton City, we recommend that that cap should be averaged at $20,000 for commercial and retail and $14,000 for industrial developments. I'm involved in a large mixed-use development in Cambridge at the moment, which is in behind the base and behind Bunnings and the McDonald's site. That development has 8,100 square metres of GFA, including 16 apartments, 31 townhouses. The DCs we're paying in Cambridge are $1.2 million. The DCs in Peacocks would be 6.5, and the DCs in Rotokauri will be 6.5, and the DCs in Peacocks would be 4.5 million, and it would make that development unviable in Hamilton City under the proposed charges. If the cap was at $20,000, the DC take would be 1.6 million. It's higher than Cambridge, but probably still makes the development viable. Amendment 5, charging residential development contributions by number of bedrooms. This amendment is inequitable. It does not apply to existing dwellings who renovate additional rooms, and the amendment would also likely be contrary to housing affordability targets, and there is a number of issues that I know submitters have talked about in regards to what happens if the developer pays for a 3-bedroom or standard contribution and they build smaller units. Under the proposed rebates policy, there's a minimum amount of HUEs you can apply for, and most residents wouldn't be able to apply for it. Amendment 9, updated growth projects. We are cautious of the accuracy of growth predictions and strongly believe the proposed development contributions as it stands will significantly hinder and slow and potentially stop in parts any form of development in various growth cells. It is likely without significant amendments to the proposed policy and charges that residential development will occur at a faster rate in Cambridge, Waikato District and support the growth of Tauranga. In addition, we believe industrial developments will likely head to Northgate Business Park, Hamilton Airport, Hautapu and surrounding towns. Amendment 10, Hamilton City schedule of access costs to be recovered will be increased by $582 million. That's an increase of 57%, and that significant increase to fall on developers. We support Hamilton City and the need to investigate diverse range of funding mechanisms to resolve potential funding obstacles. The remission and special assessment and objection cost recovery fees, we strongly oppose those. This amendment is due to the complexity of the policy and would likely result in more time being spent on approvals and front-end conversations rather than developing proceedings as soon as possible. We agree Hamilton's Golden Valley Farms is supportive of 3 outcomes of the 10-year plan, namely a great river city, enhancing Hamilton's natural environment, and a city that embraces growth and supports current and future demands. I personally think that if the DC policy and its charges aren't amended, that the city that embraces growth and supports current and future demands won't be met. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan, just one question, please, because of the sake of time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for your presentation. Just regarding the golden question, alternative funding mechanisms for council. Have you got any ideas that would help us out?
I think the Productivity Commission a few years ago did a report and it suggested a number of alternative methods. I mean, Property Council, a number of developers have said to council for quite a number of years, we need to get a group of people together, have some really robust discussions and come up with there's targeted rates, there's infrastructure bonds, there's all sorts of ideas that are out there, but I think the property, business and council need to work together and challenge central government to allow some of that stuff to occur. I mean, some of it can occur, some of it can't, and it's very complex. But I mean, this is a journey for the city to go on together, not for one part of the city to do by themselves.
Thanks.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Rob. That was a really clear presentation. You raised the difference between doing development over in Cambridge and Rotokauri and Peacocks. Without being flippant at all, isn't that just the market saying it's hideously expensive to develop out here, therefore the DCs are going to be hideously expensive over here, and I don't know what they do in Cambridge. I don't know if they're subsidising things or not, but I assume they are covering their own costs. So I assume that's just the market saying it's actually a lot cheaper to develop here. Why would you challenge that?
I mean, the Cambridge one, their funding on the Lakewood development is a demand-based assessment. Hamilton Cities is quite different than that. And then
sorry, when you say demand, you mean
on the infrastructure, impact on the infrastructure. So we had to physically work out the amount of water volumes, sewer, all that sort of carry on, and we sat down with them. I'm sure there's some discounted aspect to it because it's a significant development for the city. But we know that their DC charges on residential is significant, and I do think Hamilton should be modelling it on something similar to that, because at least that's our nearest competing region, which could be a city one day. And I know from market feedback that a number of residents who come out of Auckland, more than a good chunk of them go to Cambridge because they see that as a more desirable place. But if we're out of alignment with our surrounding cities, it'll have a detrimental impact on development in the city.
So you're
Gary,
stepping away.
Gary, we're out of time.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thanks, Rob.
I just want to give the others a chance to speak too. Councillor James, just short and precise, please.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Thank you, Robert. A DC is currently passed on to new home purchases, and if that's the fact, then obviously for a large residential dwelling, the 90,000 will be passed on to the purchasers, or it'll be actually more than that 90,000.
Well, it comes down to economics. I mean, if it can be passed on, it will. If it can't be passed on, they won't do the development, and because they won't. A development is made up a number of costs, and DCs form one of it. But then you've got to have a margin to make it viable from a funding perspective with banks. Intergenerational developers are slightly different, but a medium to small developer has to make a 20% margin or he won't get bank funding. And so if a DC charge pushes that margin well below the 20%, a development won't occur.
Thank you.
Rob, is there any final comment you want to make in wrapping up?
No, that's a lot, thanks.
Lovely.
Cheers, thank you.
Okay, we now have Jay Gelder.
Jay is making a verbal submission. He won't be found on the system.
So Jay's presenting on the 10-year plan. He's presenting for 24/7. Jay, you have 9 minutes. The clock is at the bottom corner of the electronic screen. You can, Jay will explain that. That's the name of the organisation that he's presenting for, and start when you're ready.
Great. Morning, thank you, Mayor Andrew, for having us, and councillors, thank you again. Sorry that you don't have any submission staff at the moment. I flew up from Christchurch this morning, and so this is a bit of a late notice. Just wanted to share with you around 24/7 and what it is, and really looking forward to the 10-year plan is around our young people and what's the focus with them. 24/7 is New Zealand's largest school-based youth work service, covering about 15% of state high schools. The partnership is between a church and school, but also involves the community. So you've got the councils, businesses, MSD, and the likes, grant funders, Lotto, and going like that. The youth workers are committing 10 hours a week to one particular school, and they're giving up 3 to 5 years of their life to do this. So they're studying often at university. Some of them have got part-time jobs to make this work, but we put a 3 to 5 year commitment on them because it weeds out the weak. We want people who are committed to the young people in those high schools. They work within the pastoral care of the school. They work with the counsellors, the principals, and one of their major outcomes is connecting young people into the community, actually seeing them get off their tablets, actually get involved in sports, cultural groups, whatever the community's got to offer, contribute in that way. The school pays 25% of the cost, the churches pay 25% of the cost, and the community pays 50% of the cost. And in 2018, we had 170 youth workers in 75 schools supporting around 60,000 young people. And you can see there's a map of where it is around the country. Each number represents a school, and it started 20 years ago in Christchurch, and you can see it's in all state high schools in Christchurch, and that's why that number's so high, and it's slowly moving across around about 10% growth a year across the country. So why do we need youth workers? Well, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and Hamilton City Council is part of that community, is part of that village. And so I wanted to talk to you around sort of the crisis that's happening at the moment, just to make you aware of it. Every 67 hours, a young person ends their life. We have the highest suicide rate in the developed world. Every 4 hours, a young person attempts suicide. Almost half of teenagers self-harm before they leave school. Thousands of young people are treated in hospitals and self-injuries every year, and that number is rising fast. 32% of teenagers reported being bullied in the last 6 months. 50% of young people said they would never confide in their parents after being a victim of cyberbullying. 28% of young people felt alone a little of the time. 13% feel lonely some of the time, and 4% felt lonely most of the time. And as a father, my heart breaks to see those statistics of our nation. And so that's why I think we need more positive role models in our school, like youth workers, like different agencies coming in and supporting our young people. So is it working? So one of the biggest elephants in the room that we get is 24/7's faith-based organisation. So Christians in schools, how does it work? So what we do is we work very hard with Canterbury University. We do a lot of research to measure our impact, to make sure that what we're doing is working. They can't proselytise, they can't evangelise. They are there to be positive role models in the school, under the rules and boundaries of that school. The next thing we do is we make sure every single youth worker has a qualification in youth work. We're the only organisation in New Zealand that makes that mandatory. Again, we want to make sure that the youth workers coming in are safe in their practice, and we know that what they're doing is working. So 24/7 is like a professional body, ensures like MTA for mechanics, no master builders accreditation. Just there to make sure that churches and schools are doing what they're meant to be doing and keeping it really safe with the young person. So is it working? In 2014, 2017, we surveyed over 2,500 young people, and you can see in there that actually we found that 3 years later we're actually having a bigger impact. Again, a lot of that was from the learnings from 2014, some of the feedback. How is the young person now compared to when they first started? Obviously, that's good stats to see that they, over 70% are a little better or much better having youth workers in their lives. The longer students work with a youth worker, the higher percentage they felt they helped a lot. And that really accredits our ethos around committing to 3 to 5 years. That when they do commit to that long, the bigger the impact on our young people. Here's just some indicators around young people's feedback. 48% said they helped around mental health and well-being, and the likes. And so, I don't want to go too much over stats, but what that shows is that actually this is working. Just finally, we did ask principals and said, is this working? Nearly 50% said that they want more youth workers. 52% said they've got just about the right amount. And one school obviously has too many, which that's great. How this works around the country, some next steps from here is that in Hamilton we have 11 high schools that had 24/7, or that could have 24/7, and the cost is this. For 22 youth workers in those schools, it's about 396,000. The school puts in 99,000 over those 11 schools, so it's $9,000 each. The churches put in another 99,000. And the council, the model around the country is they put in around about 25%. Some put in more, some put in less. And MSD and businesses, they too put in money, and councils around the country. Just what other councils are doing. Christchurch City Council is their priority one to have youth workers. There's, I think, 75 youth workers running around in Christchurch. They put in 200,000. Selwyn, just out of Christchurch, puts in 100,000. Auckland, Nelson, Taranaki and Marlborough are contributing, but at a local sort of board level, so I'm not sure what those are actually coming in at. So yeah, that's really me. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Angela.
Thanks, Jay. I'm only allowed to ask one question, so pay attention. So your request today is that council contribute some funding, and your preferred request would be to offer a youth work service to Hamilton students 24/7, and that would come at a cost at $99,000. Have you ever applied for community funding from council, and do you get any government funding?
So government funding, yes, we do get government funding. From a local level, I don't think currently there is in the budget a plan to be able to fund that sort of level of funding towards youth work in schools. And so really this proposal was just to put it on the radar around a proposal for the next 10 years towards youth workers in schools.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much, Jay, for that. And I'm a bit stunned. I'm a parent too, and I'm a bit stunned about the statistics, and I just think, what the heck is wrong with our parents? But can I just ask, is that reaching out? I know you're working with the youth in the schools, but is there reach back to the parents? I mean, of course, there will always be an influence, but is there some way you can reach back to the parents as well?
Yeah, that young person fits in the context of a family, and so we have to work with the family. Okay. And so that happens very often, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, thanks very much. Are all the churches on board with this project?
There's 15 denominations that are part of it, yeah. So again, they have to agree to what it means to be part of 24/7.
Okay.
And Councillor Dave.
I certainly appreciate the need for youth work in schools. I have a concern that it seems to me to be part of an education, broad education need. So what sort of support is the government looking at long term? I see you've got MSD as part of one quarter, and I imagine from what you said that's different in different places that you operate. You know, are you having any strategic discussions about their support for this sort of work long term? I know that the government is talking about putting mental health support workers into high schools, all high schools actually.
Yeah. The Ministry of Education is putting in obviously 25% through the schools op fund. The schools boards choose that. And yes, government is putting in a contribution now. It's only a year by year, so we're not, we don't want people to become reliant on it. And in some regions councils fund and some councils don't. And so it really comes down to their priorities. But what we're trying to do is get stakeholders in those communities to go, you know what, this is a priority.
Sorry, that's not my question. My question is about the government's responsibility in this area. And MSD, according to your figure, wasn't actually putting in 25%. No. It was putting in part of 25%. And I'm not sure whether that's nationwide. I'm just asking, what sort of strategic discussions are you having with the government as a whole about this space? Yeah, we met with Prime Minister John Key 18 months ago, and we have meeting with ministers in Wellington around that, and really MSD too has a fund that they've got, and that too needs to be stretched because at the moment they're not putting enough to what the need is. And so it's an ongoing conversation, and we've invited the current Prime Minister to come and engage with us some more regarding that topic, yeah. She might bring a school kid with her soon.
Yeah, who knows.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Joe.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll have one more presentation before we break, and that's Waikato Regional Council presenting on DCs, Alan Livingston and Mike Garrett. So make yourselves comfortable. Your time is 9 minutes. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. That includes questions, and your time won't start until you're ready. So we just welcome, thank you for venturing into this chamber.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew and councillors. Just firstly on the submission, and the Regional Council is very much supportive of your LTP draft plan. Just quickly going through the headings there with regard to funding for stormwater infrastructure. You'll note on the second page that we haven't met the request, but while we have allowed an increase, it's not at the level that has been asked for, and we would suggest that there is, because of the amount involved with the program, that there is a need for the two organisations to work together to achieve the best possible outcome in that regard. Drinking water supply, clearly there's going to be requirements as a result of the Havelock North drinking water inquiry, and that's going to affect all councils, but clearly the Regional Council will have a role in working with the respective TLAs. Water take consent charges, we reviewed those with a water users working party made up of representatives from all sectors, which included local government, and you'll note the charge there which shows an increase, and that applies to all those major consent users. Public transport, working very positively with Hamilton City in that regard, and we can see positive progress in that regard. Similarly with Hamilton to Auckland passenger rail service, we support the work that you're doing and the opportunity to work collaboratively with MOT, the three councils, NZTA and Auckland Transport. As you're well aware, the proposal is still subject to LTP decisions by both yourselves and ourselves, and there is still that consideration of government negotiations which are ongoing. We very much appreciate the work that you're doing in cycle trails, which is providing a regional benefit, and obviously in road safety. So, Your Worship, I'll leave it at that and happy to answer any questions. With regard to our submission on the proposed development contributions policy, we recognise that because of the significant growth that is occurring within Hamilton City, that it does cause some adverse impacts on drainage districts and flood schemes outside the city boundaries, and that's as a result of those the cumulative impacts of that. And we just ask that Hamilton City's development contributions policy allows for the collection of sufficient to ensure that that mitigation within the city is achieved. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions and acknowledge our Chief Financial Officer, Mike Garrett here, who has had a vital part to play with passenger transport as well, Mayor Andrew.
Thank you. Councillor Dove.
Yeah. And just to start off with, Alan, Chair Alan, I'd like to thank on behalf of our council, your council's work on building up our relationship much better than it's ever been in my experience. So thanks for that, particularly in the PT area. Look, I had a question on the stormwater and DC bit that you finished with. Are you happy that our proposed DC regime will address stormwater needs going forwards? I note your point about the historic underfunding, which I'd agree with.
Through the Mayor, in response to the question, in principle, yes, we're just noting the key is to ensure there's sufficient funding provision in the LTP to provide the infrastructure, and then the DC policy allows for the recovery. So that, yeah. I think that's our key point with respect to DCs, yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the historic underfunding and problems that, not just in our area, but right through the region, does Project Watershed help with that, or is it supposed to help with that? Because there was, and I'm a little unfamiliar with this, but I think there was something about the amount being collected reducing in Hamilton at least, because we've still got in some of our old areas, I mean, we're dealing with a massive one in Hamilton West suburb at the moment that's historic and a mess and costing us megabucks. So I'm just sort of wondering how Project Watershed fits into that, or whether we need to be collecting more money through that.
So in response to the question, that's the point in our submission, that a request was made to increase our collections with respect to that area. A request of 26, 27 million of total spend over 10 years. So we haven't funded the full amount of that. What we have progressively increased our budget. What we are saying is over the next couple of years we need to develop a detailed program and be in response to. So we are providing additional funding.
So that's for the city?
For this, yeah, correct.
Okay, sorry. Yep, no, I didn't take the local point there, so thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll now stop for morning tea. We'll be back at 11:30. Mike and Chair Allen, if you'd like to join us for morning tea, you'd be most welcome. Okay, Ted T. Boyd. Oh, we'll get one by the time they get here. So, Ted, you're presenting on both the 10-year plan and the DCs? So you have 9 minutes for each. Yeah, we'll get one before Ted starts. Yeah, 9 minutes for each. The timer's on the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic board, and you can't start until we've got 7 members in here, but they won't be far away.
Engine ditty. Let's get on with it, come on.
Name wrong, it's Ted T. Bock, and it's... Okay, so it's B-O-G-T if you're looking for it on your icons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got enough people here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. I might as well start with a response to the 10-year plan. I will go challenge by challenge and just read out what I actually have filled out in the paperwork to keep it short. We are borrowing to pay for everyday cost. Do you have any ideas about how the council should change the way the rates are calculated? First of all, I would say you should stick to your 3.8% rates increase every year, because it gives you an extra $6.5 million, $7 million a year to live within your means. See, coming up at 20% increase, that is just a 18, 19, 20%. That would give you another $20 million a year, and I find it a bit over the top. First, and secondly, I would charge people and not households, so you charge rates per household. See, and I don't know how many homeowners there are in Hamilton. See, I'm a homeowner in Hamilton. I'm not even living in Hamilton, so I pay a lot of rates for basically not getting, maybe not too much in return. Maybe it should be a good idea to go and charge people that living in Hamilton. So per head, people get charged. If they can't afford it, you will know rather quickly that you have to change your system. Do you have any ideas about the changes the council can make to increase its revenue? I think you should be living within your means, and you should not increase your revenue because it doesn't change attitude. It just means, okay, we're running out of money, we go to the bank, and the ratepayers, I see them as the bank, and we just want more money, and I think that's a bad idea. Live within your means, everybody else has to do that. Deciding where Hamilton's next big housing area will be, I think we should put a hold on for the next 5 years and don't develop anything at all, because it sounds like we are in a real strive to find money to put in infrastructure, development cost, development contributions. So I would just hold off for 5 years, see how it all settles down, and start up again. Gives everybody time to rearrange the house, get it in order, and move forward. Do you have any specific transport projects you think council should consider? Say, I think congestion is a people's choice. People can take other means of transport. The moment we solve congestion in Hamilton, more people will go in the car and you get more cars on the road and people will start driving more. So don't spend money on that. Invest in community infrastructure. Do you think the investment of 70.7 million in the 9 projects is the right option? Now, I only can tick off basically the Hamilton Gardens, because that is one that is a real good thing for the community. Don't go to Hamilton Gardens development, don't go to Garden Place. If you go, I think if you work out over the years how much money has been spent here on car parks that have been bought, on upgrading, and now we're going to downgrade and maybe we're going to upgrade again, it's a waste of money. Don't go there. So I would spend money on Hamilton Gardens. Then we have here, for example, we have a fenced dog exercise area. People that have dogs can pay for fenced dog areas because they have a dog. They want to let the dog out. You charge them because they're all registered dogs with Hamilton City Council. You charge user pays. Simple as that. Are there any other community projects you think the council should consider? Oh, yes, certainly do. See, there's a big parcel of land sitting on Gornton Road in Rotatuna that's supposed to be soccer fields, there's supposed to be all sorts of things. And it's the same with Tamanatu Park. Still hay-making business, so the council is still making hay within the Hamilton City. Get at least that stuff on the go, maybe spend some of that money on there. Do you think the council should charge $10 entry fee to the Hamilton Gardens? That's a no. Should be free to everybody. It attracts. Let's not go to my other ideas. It's over that one. Okay, one done. Off to the development contributions. Oh yeah, live in Hamilton. Removal of the CBD remission? Yes, everybody pays. User pays, simple as that. Removal of the existing capped charges? Don't know about that. Recovery of capital expenditure outside the 10-year plan? Probably not. Stick with 10 years first. Amendment 9 in the policy. Do you have any feedback on a proposal to charge a residential development contribution based on the number of bedrooms in a new dwelling? I think that the DCs that you're going to propose to charge per bedroom, if you go to the numbers that are put to a bedroom, if I see, for example, water in a one-bedroom unit is $6,000. If you get a two-bedroom unit, what most likely is a parent with a couple of children, then you all of a sudden it shoots up to $8,000. And you add another bedroom and it goes up to 10, and a large unit becomes $12,000 for water. In general, so the DCs are going up by about a third. And for the new areas like Rotocowrie, Peacocks, and that's probably the main big areas, see, going to $100,000 per lot, I would imagine you should actually put that back to all the landowners that are in that development, and you say to them, okay, you guys are going to sort it out with each other. This is our wish list, this is what we need, sewer up to there, stormwater has to be sorted out over there, come up with a plan, it's viable for you guys, go ahead and don't charge $100,000 per lot, because everybody will probably walk out the door. Yep. And that's not a laugh. Everybody will stop, because it might be, might not be, but if everybody stops developing, you don't get any money at all. You even got a bigger hole in your budget. So that's what I suggest is, okay, put those areas in a big pool, let the people sort it out. And see, DCs get charged up front. What you probably should do is actually DCs should be charged, okay, we have a development of 1,000 houses, wherever it is, good Rotocowrie. Okay, of the $100,000 that you want to charge, if it goes ahead, we say, okay, we put $50,000 on the homeowner, that's the house, and the other 50, or split it up, if it stays to standard, is $50,000, $60,000, 30 goes on a house, $3,000 a year, people know what is coming, they can buy it if they can afford it, if they can't buy it, it won't happen. But at least the development keeps moving on. To push everything onto the developers and putting that money up front, that will kill the show. It's all holding cost and more holding cost. Because if I read your policy, and inside they give a nice report and likely develop reaction. If I read that, it looks like, oh, the council got onto that, oh, everybody's making heaps of money here. We want to make money too. You guys are not in the business of making money, you have to break even. That's all you have to do. So at the moment we are $7 million short on your budget, $7 million, and you're living within your means again. Do we have any? Ooh, yeah. Do you have any further suggestions or feedback, or would you like considered by the council in the development policy? Make it easier. It sounds already very confusing. If I read this policy, and I've read it now for years, it becomes a very difficult book to read. It can be a lot simpler. You guys know what you have to put in. We have stormwater, we have sewer, we have roads. Telecom is not your problem, electricity is not your problem. So we got roading, water, stormwater. That's the problem you have to deal with. You know what your capacity is, and you can look way ahead. That's where you need money for, and the rest is back to the developers. This is the end station. You come up to there, we tap in, and the ratepayer pays. That was me. Thank you very much. Oh, got 8 minutes left.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks. You said you don't live in Hamilton, but you pay rates here. So do you own some rental properties here?
Exactly.
And you made the comment that you're not getting very much for your rates, but you're paying rates, are you not, on behalf of your tenants, who you then charge based on your overall outgoings?
It becomes unaffordable also for tenants. Do you know that rent's going up? The moment you start charging, more rates, yeah? Basically just of interest rates, you charge 17% more, basically I should pass it on. If I'm already very minimalistic, you tell me that on a $380 rental property, I'll have to tell my tenant next week.
The point you were making before, was it not, was that you didn't get very much for your money because you don't live in Hamilton?
No, I don't. I have a mortgage on a house, okay? That's the bank, yeah?
What proportion of your outgoings for a rental property would rates be, roughly? You got an idea on that? You know, if it's say 3,000 a year for above average property at the moment?
Yep.
Out of how much? What's the total? I'm not trying to look at your own personal finances, but is it as a proportion?
See, as a proportion, if I have a rental, yeah, average in Central here, close, $18,000 return on a rental, because my rents, see, I'm a social person, so I don't rent too high, because see, I don't go with market. See, that's what you guys have to understand. You guys think, oh, everybody can just up it. People are up to here to afford a rent. See, an average bedroom house in Hamilton, in Rotterdam, is probably $600. Imagine $600 a week coming out of your pay packet. I make it. That's not the point. It's for every Joe Blogg that is living in a rental property. Yeah.
So if it's $600 a week and the rates on average are going up by about a bit under 500, let's say $10 a week extra per property, so you'd pass that 10, so the rent would cause the rent to go up to about 610.
Yeah, but you're cutting into, like, if I make a profit,
Yeah.
see, you say, okay, $10 a week.
No, I'm talking about passing it on, the whole lot of it on.
Yes, yeah, that's what you basically should do, because that's what you guys do. You guys say, okay, we're running short of money here. We come to you, we want 20% extra.
That $10 or $12 might be only a 2% lift in cost for the 10. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
a 2%, but a 20% increase. So 2% for him, see, 20% increase on a $380, for example, because I pay for everything, like whatever it is, yeah. So that is not a 2%, $10. So don't say, oh, but see, for some people, $10 is already a struggle, depending on where you sit on the socio-economic scale. And I've got people in my houses that are on the bottom end, and I can't charge them anymore. I'm not going to either, actually.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much for your submission, Ted. I like simplicity, it's good. I just want to know on the fenced dog park, you said user pays. How would you like to see that happening?
All dogs are registered in Hamilton.
Okay, so
you want a dog walk area?
They pay.
They pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what they should do with rates. See, just charge people directly. Okay. See, I don't have to charge my tenant. And coming back to Dave's point. See, people living in my house, they can pay a tax to the council. They live in Hamilton here, they use everything. They pay a tax. It's not my problem anymore.
Not legal to do that. But...
No, it's not legal, but it would be a way to look at it.
Thank you.
See, where I come from, that's how it works.
Yeah, but we're in New
I know, yeah, I know we're in New Zealand. But we look to everywhere, what's all going around in the world. We know everything, all the news, and Mark is getting married and the father is not good. See, look around, yeah. Some parts in the world, they might do things different. That works actually a lot easier than we do here.
Thank you, Ted, for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've got Richard Rusk. Okay, before you start, Richard, I just want to remind members that, sit down, you're right, we're here to, when it comes to questions, we're here to ask questions to help us understand, but we're not here to debate or correct. If somebody's got it wrong, that's not our job at this stage. What people are here for is we're here to listen to what they've got to say, and questions are really just to help understand. But I don't want to get into debate on where we're or what the person's presenting on. So I've been quite firm on that up until today, but today I've let that slip a bit, but I'm just going to tighten up on that a bit. So Richard, you have who you're presenting for? And what are you presenting on?
On the 10-year plan and the development contributions policy.
Okay, so you have 18 minutes. Your time will be on the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic board. That'll include questions.
Yep. And
the clock won't start until you're ready. And I just want to welcome you here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming and presenting to us.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Mr Mayor, this is an environment I'm comfortable with. I'm gumboots, shorts, t-shirts for work. But yeah, this is a pretty big topic for me and the family business I'm involved in. So if I can just knock off the 10-year plan very briefly, just massively disappointed to see funding for Rotokauri pushed further out. If I could start the background to our particular project, we've got a subdivision proposed for 170 sections in Rotokauri Road, right beside the Avalon Wintec campus. We purchased that property in 2007 with assurances from Hamilton City Council Planning that we would have diggers on the ground in 18 months. Haven't started yet. In July 2014, we got involved with an ICMP plan with all the major stakeholders in the area, and we're ensured that at the end of that 18-month process, we'll be diggers on the ground and building houses in Rotokauri. That got signed off in July of last year, so it's 3 years. Finally get our resource consent in, and all the relevant parties of WRC hadn't been consulted. We're waiting since November at the moment for a member of WRC to inform us whether the 6 beetles found in the ecology study are sufficient to hold up our works. So we've missed this construction season again. It's a little frustrating having hurdles placed in front of hurdles, and the cost of developing has got higher and higher with the stormwater requirements that area. We're to the point where it's very marginal, getting ready to pull the trigger at the end of 11 years, ready to jump the last hurdle, and the DC policy comes out and chops somewhere in the vicinity of $8 million out of a budget on a project that was very, very tight. I don't know if anyone else has had a letter in the mail saying that their property's being in value at the end of June. It's not very nice. I know a lot of people in here are very upset that their rates are going up by 7–10% or something. It's not quite the same as getting a letter in the mail to saying you're having $8 million chopped off the value of a property. It's pretty harsh on a project that should have already been finished. For every intention of our organisation, we would have had houses built, people in there, and ourselves long gone and on to our next project by this time. So there's a level of frustration that has been built upon at this time. I've got a couple of pages of notes, but driving in today, wondering why I was so worked up, because I don't get stressed about work. But yeah, that's a kicker. The DC policy is a major concern. The fact that they can make such a massive change in such a short period of time, the council and the general public rely on us developers to play a very long game in land development, planning over very long schedules of time. And we need some surety over that period that when we get to the end of our investment in time and energy that we're going to be able to do what we want to do, not have someone in the space of 4 to 6 months completely blow all your cost structure out of the windows. If I wasn't a big family business and I was a young bullish developer that had come to Hamilton last year and paid 16 or 17 million for the property I'm talking about, which would have been market value at the time, and I'm into the bank for 15 million, and I'm trying to raise 6 million to do the works for the first stage, and all of a sudden it's had 8 million struck off it at the stroke of a pen, it doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence for coming to Hamilton to do business going forward. That's the Wild West. Maybe Haiti or somewhere might operate like that, but it's a thoroughly unacceptable way to incur costs upon people trying to run a business. Last time DCs went up, they went from 5,000 to 30-odd thousand, fivefold, that was massive. And then for some reason they've gone on with inflation again. We got the presentation the other week and DCs and Rotorua obviously going through the roof, and then they're going to go with inflation again. Can we not learn? Can we not have some sort of approach mechanism where DCs creep at a rate that's foreseeable and spread out across a period, so that those of us that are investing in the long term have some surety in the long term? Because in 10 years' time, they're not going to go, oh, that inflationary based system worked. They're going to be hammering it again. It's just not acceptable. My concern is having the rates levied against, DCs levied against the number of bedrooms in a house. This organisation spent, I assume it's millions of dollars and thousands of hours convincing everyone that the most equitable way to spread costs within the city is on the capital value of a home. It seems to be in the paper most weeks. This team that have done this policy have come out and decided that, no, we're going to work it out on the number of bedrooms in a house. That's the fairest way to do it. Seems rather counterintuitive to me. In an environment where we're going to try and provide low-cost housing, your DCs and the cost of the land therewith under your house is going to be based on geographical, hydrological and topographical features of the area that it's in. Surely it's easier to slip an extra 30,000 of DCs into a house in Rotorua that's $800, $900, $1 million than someone trying to provide a property in the low 500s for affordable housing people under Home Start, or even normal mums and dads trying to get into that sub $700,000 mark. It's very hard to hide an extra $30,000 or $40,000 cost in those houses. I knew I'd be quick. That's me. I'm pretty happy with that. Any questions?
So we'll move to questions.
It's a big story, but it's pretty short.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Richard. Just want to ask a question around the resource consenting. I hear your frustration now with the pushbacks, and now the planning has overtaken it and you'll push back even further. That's what you're saying? Yeah.
And things are catching up that when we were trying to do the project, these DCs weren't even an issue and we should have been long gone. It's a big cost for periods of time like that, and people might think, oh, you've made huge capital gain. When you're holding tens of $1 million worth of land for 10 years, that doesn't happen for free. There's a cost to doing that. And so any time, even months, are costing us tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars while we're creaming it. Yeah.
So I just want to understand that you lodged your resource consent.
Yes.
It hadn't been heard, but you lodged it with council.
Yes.
And the beetle issue came up. So council has alerted the WRC.
Yes, so WRC, we're just waiting for someone to come back on that.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Where are you heading? Because
the submitter mentioned that he's been held up by lack of information and a resource consent. Now, where I want to head with this also is that I notice in your written submission that you do note that, some issues around the swale. Yes. And the complicated catchment. What is your view on that? Is that a significant reason for delay as well, or how does that sit? I mean, it's not just the beetle is where I was getting at. There's other issues in here.
We've come to the ICMP process with the key stakeholders in HCC was pretty comprehensive, and the developers we all took the path of least resistance through that process, not wanting to slow it down, and we understand there's some major capital cost attributed to it. And it's obviously something that just has to happen to make Rota Carry work. But once again, that process took twice as long as we were ensured it would. And at the end of the process, we found out that not all the relevant parties of WRC had been consulted on that document.
On the catchment?
On the ICMP, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is why we were a little blindsided with the ecology saying, oh, this wasn't covered in ours, but the ICMP had been sold to us as a panacea. We could have actually started earlier with a catchment management plan for our own development, but in good faith we're told, hey, no, we're going to get this landed. This is going to be the cure-all for Rota Carry, so you sit on your hands, because it was a very good faith thing between disparate parties around a table that operated in very good faith, and it just hasn't landed where it should have.
Okay, no, I understand that now. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Following Paula's line of questioning a little bit, Richard, are you telling us that you put your resource consent application in middle of last year, I think you said, but staff are saying to someone from council saying to you that you're going to have to pay DCs under the new regime post 1st of July this year, rather than the one that was existing at the time you lodged your application?
Yeah, our application at the time was for the first stage of our subdivision. But we're working on hopefully getting some more lodged, but we don't know.
Sorry, so that one for stage one?
For stage one is lodged at the current rate,
Yeah,
yes.
at the current rate. Yeah.
And that stage, if we weren't a family business that intends to build the houses as well, would not be viable as a standalone subdivision to a developer.
Okay, so the new DC rate won't apply
to the first
to
stage.
anything that's lodged, any resource consent that's lodged before 30 June?
That's right, yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Thanks.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Richard. And I can remember the ICMP project. There's sort of, I think it's one of our first ones we did, I think, from my understanding. So your concern is that the ICMP has changed? Or
no,
the costs within it have...
No, the ICMP is not my biggest concern.
Okay.
The ICMP just was very slow delivering and still has not quite delivered. My biggest concern is the distribution of the development contributions across the city.
Okay, so just
so Gary, can you stay on that? Excuse me. Can you stay on that subject? This is about DCs.
Yeah.
And this is about the 10-year plan.
That's exactly what I was doing. So
yeah, I have no intrinsic opposition to. I realise that the ICMP creates larger costs in Rota Carry, but I feel that the position of the use of councillors to spread costs across citywide, not necessarily punish one area for its geographical. Yeah.
So I guess I thought, do you feel that the development contributions you're being asked to pay are not justified as a consequence of the information we've gained from the ICMP?
I think they are, but I don't think they should be just smashed onto Rota Carry as such. I think they should be carried by the whole city, not purely by the catchment.
Because you think the rest of the city gets some value from them?
There is a lot of supposedly amenity value within the structure they're doing, and it's an area of the city that needs to develop. Okay. It's bordering the biggest employment zone in the city with growth at the moment, and it needs to happen. Council's here to make distasteful things that people don't want to pay for happen. If we didn't have that happening, we wouldn't need a council. If everyone was happy to go out and pay to get their road repaved and pay to get their water and rubbish, we wouldn't need a council. It's here to sometimes suck it up and do what needs to be done. Okay.
Sorry if I can just have a little more leniency. So the challenge here is that you say you're pretty much accepting that the swales and all that stuff has been done. Yep. And you and I are not water engineers, so we're relying on other people to tell us that. But you think that the cost of it, even, and in my words, not your words, even though you are, or it's the development out there that is causing the need for those things, you still think that some of it should go back onto the general city? Yeah. Because and is the rationale that development just won't happen if we don't do it, or is it that the rest of the city actually gets some benefit from the swales? Both. The development will not happen. Okay. And the city is going to get a big amenity value out of the swale area. It's 65, 75 metres wide and proposed to have walkways, cycleways and whatnot through it.
Yeah.
I understand your point.
And I think the only way to provide housing at the right price is also to attribute those DCs to the housing values. And out there you've got an area that's proposed to have massive costs, but it's traditionally a lower cost area of town. It seems a little counterintuitive. Rototuna can afford to pay it, but it doesn't need to. You know, rates are apportioned around your capital value. Why can't DCs work on a similar sort of scheme?
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much, Richard. We now have Mike Neal. Mike, who you presented? Are you presenting together? Okay, so so this is a joint presentation by Harcourts and Hamilton Central Business Association, or is it just the Hamilton Central Business Association?
I'm covering the development contribution remission for the CBD, and Vanessa is covering the LTP.
So who are you presenting on behalf of Mike?
NAI Harcourts.
On what subject?
On
DCs only?
DC remission
Okay.
in the CBD.
And Vanessa, what are you covering?
I'm covering LTP.
So the 10-year plan.
Yes.
And you're doing a joint presentation or separate?
I'll do mine first, and then Vanessa will do hers second.
Okay. So Mike, we'll take yours first then with questions.
Yep.
So you have 9 minutes. Okay, then time on the bottom right-hand corner of the electronic board. That
Yes.
9 minutes includes questions.
Okay.
And then we'll move to Vanessa, 9 minutes and 9 minutes for questions. The other way you can do it is you can have 18 minutes and mix and match how you like if you would prefer.
That's all right.
I think
No.
it's right if we
Okay.
split it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, councillors and mayor. We do not support the removal of the CBD development contribution remissions. Having had responses from 10 plus developers with experience in recent developments in the CBD, none agree to the 1st of July removal of remissions for development contributions, with a number strongly opposing the proposal. The CBD remissions on development contributions have been a critical factor over the last 4 or so years in terms of the financial viability of almost all of developers' projects in the CBD, but particularly with new build and intensive developments. The developers that we have met with and that we have written responses from include Anglesey Medical Properties, CBD Developments, De Silva Builders, DV Bryant Trust Board, Federated Farmers, Stark Property, Yeoman Property and Wintech. In the 15 years I've been involved in the CBD, 10 of that we saw no or little development at all. Now we appear to be on the cusp of something good happening, but it just seems far too early to remove these development contribution remission that we have. I think the catalyst to it was one of the original developments we saw in the CBD on the corner of London and Victoria Street, the old Dairy Company board. I remember talking to the developer Safari Group, who met with council, and they basically came out and said, if you want DCs, we won't be developing the building that's sat vacant for 10 plus years. That may have even been one of the key instigators of the policy that we have today. And now we have Quest service departments in there. I don't think you want to be the council that will stall the progress and momentum that we have started to gain, but it does appear far too early. The developers are the one that are taking the risk, and I think you need to let them take that risk. I think there are enough other constraints and costs that they're facing anyway, and they do have additional costs that they face by developing in the CBD. There's been talk about it being a level playing field. Let's make it a level playing field for everyone. It's been a level playing field, and I look at, you know, in terms of the CBD, council allowed residential houses to be converted to office space, and at one stage there was 27,000 square metres of converted houses as office space. My understanding is that Kiwi didn't oppose the base. When the base was developed, they said, look, Hamilton needs a bulk retail centre. So, yeah, we actually support what Tainui want to do out there, and I look at what it is today. So it really has never been a level playing field. The one thing you can actually do, the CBD, is the development contribution remission that you have today. If you had to remove it, and my view is that at some stage in the future it does need to be removed, but it's just far too early. Maybe it gets reviewed again in 3 years' time when you look at the LTP again. That would be one option that I would look at. The other one, in talking to these developers, they said, look, maybe even phase it out over 4 years. So for the next year it remains as is, the year after that it's a 75% remission, the year after that 50% remission. What that will do is allow the developers that have an interest in the CBD to actually get on and get it done sooner rather than later. But I think if you stall it now, I think you'll look back in a few years' time and go, boy, we were actually getting pretty close and now look what has happened. So that would be my take on the remission of the development contributions in the...
Okay, we'll move to questions. Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much, Mike, for that. You just said right at the start that we are on the cusp of something big in the city, and I just wondered, can you see that growth still happening for quite a while and the change of the city?
Absolutely. And I think we've got to a stage, we're getting developers come to us almost daily now saying, what have we got, what can we do? We need something in 12 or 18 months' time. And they said, look, to be fair, we do need to see what's going to happen with the DC policy. But yeah, you can see it and you can feel it. It's happening commercially, it's happening, you know, from the residential development. And I was one that wasn't overly keen on the whole residential development. Now I fully endorse and support it because I think it is adding something to it. So we're close, but I suspect you will look back if you pull this policy right now and wish you hadn't in a couple of years' time.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Mike. You were here when Richard was talking, Richard Rusk.
Briefly, yes.
Oh, you didn't hear much of this?
I didn't hear all of it, no.
All right. So he's arguing the same sort of thing, that even if the cost is there, the developers can't carry it all. I think that, I don't quote me as that's what he said, but that's what I took, part of what I took. You're saying the same thing.
Yes.
So who do you think should carry the cost then? Does it still stay within the development contribution and the developers in other parts of the city pay for it, or does it come back onto the ratepayer?
I suspect it probably has to come back to the... Every city in the world is judged by their central city. It doesn't matter where you are. You're not judged by a suburban shopping mall or whatever else you may have. You're judged by your CBD. So at the end of the day, I suspect an element of is going to fall on ratepayers, and maybe it's even ratepayers within the CBD, as opposed to all ratepayers.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So it's going to have to be carried somewhere. But again, the developers are the one taking the risk. They're the ones that need the support.
May I just ask, so just going on from that, would that, so, and I'm not going to hold you to this, but does that suggest there might be a $50 per property targeted rate in the CBD, which makes up for the loss in development? And that's a totally off the top of my head figure and okay.
Don't quote me on it, but yeah, my view is that that may be a solution to it.
Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Given that, and I presume you're supporting the quality of urban design that's required.
Correct.
Because you want the city to look of a good standard. And the seismic is the other issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, we're all hit by that, aren't we?
Correct.
But, so you're saying that in order to have a quality city going forward, to reach these high levels of design and standard,
yes,
it costs more, and therefore this remission will help you do that and pick up the overall quality of the CBT building?
And that is one of it, makes it financially viable in the first place. But yes, second point, and one we did ask all the developers, with that remission, it does allow them to provide a better quality end product because of that.
Because you are required now to do that better.
Yes,
quality.
correct. Yeah. So no, we all want quality development, and that's what it should be about from every developer, and that's what council should be facilitating as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vanessa.
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for your time this morning and to reinforce my written submission on behalf of the business community. As you would have read from the Hamilton Central Business Association submission, we have supported a number of projects proposed for the CBD, including investment in large capital projects, and also opposed what we view as two setbacks to the continued revitalisation of the CBD, that being the immediate change from LV to CV rating system, and also the removal of the CBD remission. So just to reinforce this view, the businesses within the CBD obviously are many, and having spoken to and surveyed hundreds of them from the business community, one area all of the businesses are unanimous on is the need to continue to create a vibrant, revitalised CBD. So cities are built for people, cities are judged on their livability, the community, social and economic services they provide. Hamilton's central city is on the rise. You can see it every day with construction, redevelopment, new businesses opening. It is well recognised that we are on an upward trajectory. Statistics available from market view spend data, pedestrian counts, declining vacancy rates, they're all showing positive turns around every corner, but we're not finished yet. So the city still needs to continue to invest in creating a thriving, vibrant hub that supports the wider region. There are still old, untidy, earthquake-prone buildings. There are areas around the CBD that lack character and colour, streetscapes and street furniture that show little or no imagination or placemaking, and there is ad hoc entertainment. So these are areas I believe we're getting left behind in when compared with other cities. And the CBD has large multinational employers and leading edge sectors who are needing to attract staff nationally and internationally. These businesses need a city that they can attract people to. They need a vibrant city that people want to live in, that they have services that are expected, and that they offer experiences that people can enjoy. So I have included with my submission an activation proposal from the HCBA to manage the public spaces in the CBD, and that is to leverage the opportunities of existing organisations, events and entertainment to grow experiences offered here in the Central City. So providing more experiences, more activities, more events in the CBD will not only complement the largest proportion of the Hamilton's workforce, being close to 22,000 people here, it will also have a positive flow-on effect on desirability for inner city living, will positively impact the nighttime economy and contribute to a thriving city centre that will benefit businesses, residents and visitors to our city and beyond. So to reiterate, HCBA supports investment in experiences, activations and capital projects to support a thriving CBD and to continue to grow Hamilton as a great place to live, work and play. And I'd also like to say beyond the proposed LTP investment projects, I would like to further highlight some other proposed projects in my submission. That's around a CBD bike hub. There are opportunities to leverage partnerships within the business community, and one proposal I have recently been involved with is around the creation of a bike hub to support alternative transport into the CBD. So this project is looking at creating a biking destination hub consisting of bike lock-up facilities, lockers and showers, combined with businesses selling and renting bikes, a bike mechanics and a biking association. And this is a sort of collaborative model that could be a shared investment opportunity with council, local business and community funding to support the cycling community and also to contribute to the goals of the city bike transportation plan. And there are many other models of this collaborative approach that I believe could be used to problem solving some other things within the city. Secondly, a CBD skate park. This is something that I've just been seeing some fantastic examples around other cities where, both in New Zealand and internationally, where inner city skate parks are proving to be a great contribution. And Hamilton boasts a massive youth market that is growing, and we need to ensure that the city and the CBD doesn't miss out on this market as well and doesn't miss providing opportunities for this market. So we also need to create activities for young people to thrive in the city as well. Leading on from that, CBD destination experiences, we need to leverage opportunities to create more things to do in the city. The tourism market for the region is at an all-time high, and we need to be a contender to keep these people here with experiences and activations that can attract to the market of the city or the marketability of the city tourism destination. And finally, just to touch on CBD transportation, I want to see the discussion continue around commuter travel, park and ride facilities, rail investment and appropriate transport corridors connecting key areas in the city to key development projects like developments, like the new port development and also the development with other cities. Perfect, did that in time. Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Siggy.
Oh, thank you so much, Vanessa. I love, well, you talked about some really awesome stuff, but you said one of the things fairly at the start was you're talking about some unsightly areas that we've got in the city, like empty buildings and empty spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, we had a submitter a couple of days ago who quoted something from another country, a policy from another country, and if you don't use it, you lose it. What do you think about that idea?
It sounds good. Yeah, I mean, without knowing the full context of it, I think there are some clever ways that perhaps empty buildings can be utilised within the city. I did also include that in my submission about looking to harness the arts more within some of these empty buildings and provide some of that activation. There's more work required behind that, but again, that's a model that's been used nationally and internationally, and with the support of building owners that might not necessarily be able to develop or have the means to develop straight away, will look to support some community or creative initiative in the short term, again, providing that dynamism to a city. And I think those sorts of solutions that might be a little bit left field could be really good.
Thank you. Awesome.
Councillor Angela.
Thanks for your submission, both of you. But my question's to Vanessa. You've put your request for a major your members support a request for a major upgrade for Garden Place. Second preference, a minor upgrade for Garden Place, and then also your activation plan. If you could, I'm going to put the pressure on here, if you can only choose one, which one would it be? And my second part of that question, because we're only allowed to ask one question, is can you give me your preference for eyesight, because you've mentioned in your submission you'd like it in a more prominent place?
So my preference would be first activation, and the rest can come later, but when it's activated the space looks better.
Thank you.
And eyesight, yes, I believe there is an opportunity to create a more visible presence and potential around a collaborative opportunity there, perhaps in our office, and seeing how that could work with the visibility that we're afforded with floor-to-ceiling windows, outlook over Garden Place.
Great, well answered, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mike and Vanessa, for your verbal submissions. I'm kind of concerned about Central City safety, as you know, and everything else. So I hear about the skate park and the CBD. Where would you envisage that to go? Like Civic Square here or something like that? Because the main reason I'm asking is having a skate park in the Central City, wouldn't that attract a certain element that would probably not conducive to a safe and enjoyable place to be, because that's what we're trying to promote the city to be?
And certainly from what I have been reading about what's happening with skate parks being put in central cities, it actually has the opposite effect, because it's so visible and there's so much life brought with people utilising skate parks in prominent places, that perhaps less desirable element of a skate park intending to be more hidden areas, it allows that, whereas if it's in a full public view, it is another element of activation. As to where I would put it, and this is with absolutely no researched idea at all, but personally I think there would be some greatness around down by the stadium, like between sort of Waikato Stadium, Westpac Park. You've got the squash courts, the bowling club. You know, I could see a great little thriving sports hub or sports precinct area of the city. You've got 4 lanes of traffic going past there, lights and everything. You know, there's constantly people around. Where the space is, again, I don't know, but I'm just saying, you know, these tennis courts, to me, it just would add.
Okay, so it's out of the CBD then. So
yeah, I'm not necessarily saying, you know, right in Garden Place, but certainly in a prominent place. And again, it just adds to another attractiveness element of the city.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got 1 minute left. We've got 3 people, so one short question each. Councillor Dave.
Vanessa, the same sort of question regarding the bike hub. Which part of the city, not exact place, but centre, south, north?
There is actually a legitimate place that we're looking at, and that is a building, and it's down on Victoria Street, sort of behind the library. And again, it's said without having gone completely through the process.
Behind the library?
No. Beside, in that block of buildings beside us, Ronnie's Cafe, that sort of block along there.
The closest block to the garden.
Yeah, but it has to be somewhere very central to allow people to actually be able to utilise that and access lockable, that sort of thing. Yep.
Thanks.
And last question, Councillor Paula.
Thank you. The views of your members on covered walkways, street furniture and the place of the library and garden place.
So there is good support for the library being in Garden Place. There has been quite a few views expressed about wanting to see that library opened up in public and actually having it seen as a more vibrant, open space. And there has been comment about not putting the offices back frequently in the front portion of that, but integrating it more into Garden Place. And also utilising the library as an activation element for Garden Place. So there has been discussion around how children's activities could be incorporated out onto Garden Place from the library there, and technology.
Street furniture and covered walkways?
Covered walkways is a desirable element, but nobody, it hasn't been a deal breaker in terms of development of space, but it's certainly an identified element that would add. And street furniture, there is much talk about the street furniture, the fact that it's ad hoc, unplanned, and unattractive, and in places that aren't great.
Okay, thank you.
In a nutshell, yes.
Lovely, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now break for lunch. We'll be back at 1:45. No point coming back earlier. Told me that, and then I could have felt good about actually giving you something, Leanne, because I never give you anything.